Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, learners and leaders, let me begin by saying something that might challenge what many of us have been taught. Your worst moment does not define you. Your mistakes, your breakdowns, your failures, your setbacks, they are not your identity. They are just events, temporary, painful, yes, but not permanent. Why then do we carry them like heavy backpacks through life? Why do we allow a single failure in the past to become the definition of who we are today? This mindset is dangerous because it freezes potential, it locks creativity, it stops progress. When you believe you are what went wrong, you start living as if you have no right to rise. You stop raising your hand in class. You stop applying for new opportunities. You stop dreaming big. And worst of all, you stop believing in yourself. But here's the truth. You are always bigger than your worst mistake. Always. The human brain is wired for growth. The human soul is capable of deep change. You are not a static being. You are evolving every single day. Think of some of the greatest minds, the brightest innovators, the most inspiring leaders. Almost all of them failed, and not once. Repeatedly, publicly, painfully, but here's the key difference. They didn't act according to their worst moment. They acted according to their highest vision. They didn't pretend they were the best. They practiced being their best, even when it was hard. That's what you must do too. Act as if you're the best version of yourself, not because you're arrogant, but because you're aware of what's possible if you give yourself permission to grow. When you walk into the classroom, workplace, or any room, don't carry your history like a burden. Carry your learning like a badge. Show up with the energy of someone who knows their future is brighter than their past. Being your best isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent, showing up even when your inner critic whispers, "You're not good enough." Acting with confidence even when doubt knocks on your door, speaking up even when fear tries to silence you. So the next time life reminds you of your worst day, remind yourself of this. That moment was a lesson, not a label. Your story is still being written, and yes, you hold the pen. Act as if you are the best, because inside you, the best version is waiting patiently to be lived. Thank you. When we talk about personal identity, one of the biggest misconceptions people carry is the belief that they are defined by the worst thing they've ever done or the most difficult moment they've ever experienced. This idea takes root early in life. Maybe you failed a test, made a mistake in front of others, got rejected, or even went through a major failure that shattered your confidence. And from that moment onward, you started believing that the failure wasn't just something that happened, but that it was something you are. This is where the problem begins. A moment, however painful, embarrassing, or regretful it may be, is just that, a moment. It is a point in time. It does not have the authority to become the full story of your life unless you allow it to. Imagine looking at a full book and deciding the entire story based on a single bad chapter. It sounds unreasonable, doesn't it? Yet people do this with themselves all the time. One mistake, one rough period, one poor decision, and suddenly they begin to wear it as a permanent label. But this label is not the truth. It's just a memory, an incident. The real truth is that every human being is layered, complex, and always evolving. A single moment in time, no matter how extreme, cannot define the entirety of who you are. The danger in defining yourself by your worst moment is that it limits your capacity to grow. It traps you in a version of yourself that no longer exists. It builds invisible walls around your confidence and potential. You stop raising your hand because you're afraid of being wrong again. You stop taking chances because one risk in the past didn't work out. You stop trusting yourself because once, when it mattered most, you fell short. But let me tell you, growth does not happen in a straight line. Even the most successful individuals, the most respected voices, and the most inspiring leaders have been through deeply painful, humiliating, or difficult times. The difference is, they didn't let those times define them. They used them, they learned from them, they moved beyond them. There's something deeply freeing in realizing that a bad moment doesn't have to follow you forever. When you separate your self-worth from your past mistakes, you begin to unlock real confidence. You understand that you are more than the worst thing you've done, that you have value even when you fall, that you have the power to make better choices now, even if you made poor ones before. When you carry this mindset, you stop living with shame and start living with responsibility. You take accountability, yes, but you don't let guilt weigh you down like a stone. You don't shrink your future because of your past. Let's also consider how this shift in thinking changes how we view other people. If you begin to believe that no one is defined by their worst moment, you also begin to extend more grace to others. You become slower to judge, more open to understanding, and more willing to forgive. You create a world where growth is possible for everyone, including yourself. This doesn't mean we excuse wrongdoing or forget the past. It simply means we don't imprison ourselves or others inside of it. You were not born to be trapped in your lowest point. You were born with the ability to change, to heal, to rise. And sometimes it takes falling to discover what you're truly made of. Sometimes the worst moment can become the turning point, but that only happens when you refuse to let it define you. When you stop replaying the failure and start reprogramming your focus. When you say to yourself, that was a part of my story, but it is not the definition of who I am. The moment you stop identifying yourself by what went wrong, you open the door to everything that can still go right. That's the beginning of true transformation, not in pretending the past didn't happen, but in refusing to let it write the rest of your life. Mistakes are an inevitable part of life. From the moment we start learning how to walk, talk, think, and make decisions, we are bound to stumble, fall, and misstep. It's a natural part of growth and development. Yet for many people, mistakes become more than just learning opportunities. They become a source of shame, self-doubt, and long-term insecurity. There is a strong cultural narrative that says if you mess up, it means you're not good enough, not smart enough, or not worthy of success. But this narrative is flawed, because the truth is, mistakes are not signs of weakness. They are signs that you're trying, evolving, and reaching beyond your comfort zone. They don't diminish your worth. They are part of what shapes your wisdom. What we need to understand is that making a mistake does not reduce the value of a person. Just as a diamond doesn't lose its worth because it's covered in dust, your inner value doesn't vanish because of one or many wrong decisions. In fact, mistakes often carry the most valuable lessons, the kind of lessons that no book, lecture, or motivational quote can truly teach. When you experience the consequences of a mistake, when you feel the pain of a wrong move, it activates a deeper level of learning. You begin to understand what works and what doesn't. You become more cautious, more intentional, and more aware. This level of self-awareness doesn't come from playing life safe. It comes from getting it wrong sometimes, learning from it, and doing better next time. One of the greatest mental shifts you can make is detaching your self-worth from your errors. Mistakes are events, not identities. Failing at something doesn't mean you are a failure. Losing once doesn't mean you're destined to keep losing. Being rejected doesn't mean you're unworthy of acceptance. When you internalize your mistakes as permanent reflections of your value, you lock yourself in a cycle of fear. You stop taking action. You fear being judged. You aim low just to avoid another mistake. But when you begin to see errors as part of a process, not proof of incompetence, everything changes. You start giving yourself permission to experiment. You allow yourself to speak up, take chances, and keep growing even if the road gets messy. Think about how we learn anything meaningful in life: riding a bicycle, writing an essay, building relationships, starting a business. None of these things are mastered without mistakes. It's not even possible. Perfection is not the foundation of growth. Repetition, correction, and resilience are. And guess what all of those require? Mistakes. That's why the most successful people in the world are not the ones who avoided failure. They're the ones who used failure as feedback. They didn't get everything right the first time. They misjudged, fell down, got embarrassed, and probably even wanted to quit. But they didn't allow those moments to define their future. They saw each mistake as a stepping stone, not a dead end. When you begin to see mistakes in this way, something powerful happens. You begin to grow faster. You learn how to adjust quicker. You stop fearing the fall because you've trained yourself to rise. This is how resilience is built. Not by avoiding difficulty, but by facing it and using it. And when you apply this mindset to your personal growth, education, career, or relationships, you become unstoppable because you're no longer afraid of setbacks. You know they are just part of the path. Also, when you shift your attitude toward mistakes, you start to treat yourself with more compassion. Instead of beating yourself up, you ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of hiding, you reflect. Instead of giving up, you adapt. This mental flexibility is a key ingredient in emotional strength. It helps you move forward when others get stuck. It helps you bounce back when others break down. Because you've trained your mind not to see mistakes as personal failures, but as professional development. So, remember this. Making mistakes is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are becoming. Each mistake is a mirror, showing you what needs attention, where there is room to grow, and how to improve your thinking. The more you learn from them, the better you become, not despite the mistakes, but because of them. And through that process, your confidence will rise, not because you are perfect, but because you understand that your worth is never determined by how often you fall. It is defined by your willingness to rise every single time. Living as your best self does not mean achieving perfection. It doesn't mean having all the answers, never failing, or being flawless in every decision. It means showing up with the intention to grow, to do better, and to carry yourself in alignment with your potential. Even when you're unsure, even when things are hard, and especially when you're tempted to shrink into your past mistakes. Perfection is a myth, a moving target that nobody ever truly hits. But persistence, on the other hand, is real, accessible, and transformative. Acting like your best self is about making conscious decisions that support who you want to become, not who you're afraid you are because of what's gone wrong. There is a power in simply trying again, in choosing to act with dignity, purpose, and self-respect even after you've stumbled. Many people wait until they feel perfect before they start living like they matter. They wait until they've reached some invisible standard of success before they speak up, lead, share, or try. But that moment of perfection never comes, and in waiting, they lose precious time and opportunities. The truth is, you don't have to be at your peak to practice showing up powerfully. You can be unsure and still be brave. You can be healing and still be kind. You can be learning and still make a difference. The act of living as your best self is not about faking confidence. It's about choosing behavior that reflects belief in your own worth. People often confuse confidence with arrogance, but there's a key difference. Arrogance is loud, based on fear, and obsessed with proving something. Confidence, however, is quiet, grounded, and focused on growth. Acting as your best self is about holding your head high, not because you think you're better than others, but because you refuse to let fear or shame dictate your posture anymore. When you walk into a room like you matter, you start to believe that you do. When you treat others with respect while demanding the same in return, you train people how to treat you. When you choose to respond with thought instead of react with emotion, you build the habits of a powerful mind. This doesn't mean the journey is easy. There will be moments when the old you tries to take over, when self-doubt creeps in, when you make another mistake and feel like giving up again. But that is exactly when this principle matters most. Living as your best self in those moments is a form of quiet rebellion against the voice in your head that says you aren't good enough. It is a choice to break old cycles and patterns. It is a choice to keep moving forward, to keep learning, and to keep showing up in the way someone with purpose would. That's how identity is shaped, not in one perfect moment, but through repeated acts of commitment, effort, and belief. Many people wait for external validation before they start acting like they matter. They wait for someone to recognize them, promote them, encourage them, or validate them before they feel allowed to stand tall. But the truth is, That kind of validation is always temporary. It fades. And if you rely on it too much, you end up becoming someone else's version of who you should be. Living as your best self means creating internal validation. It means waking up and choosing to move with integrity, even when no one is watching. It means treating yourself with kindness, holding yourself accountable, and choosing to build habits that match the life you say you want to live. Your best self is not something you discover one day. It is something you become through daily decisions, and it's not about faking strength, it's about building it, one choice at a time, one moment of discipline at a time, one act of courage at a time. You don't have to be the best to act as your best. You simply have to be willing to stop living as the version of yourself that fear created. Choose the version that growth is shaping. Even if you don't feel ready, act ready. Even if you feel small, carry yourself with strength. That's not pretending, that's becoming, and that's what changes everything. Confidence is often misunderstood. Many people believe it's something you either have or you don't, like a fixed trait you're born with. But confidence is not a gift that falls from the sky. It is a choice, a habit, a mindset you build through small, consistent actions. Real confidence doesn't start with praise or applause. It begins in the moments when no one is watching, when your doubts are loud, and you still decide to show up and give your best. It begins when you keep your promises to yourself, even when quitting feels easier. That's when confidence grows, not because you've done something spectacular, but because you're proving to yourself that you can trust your own effort. Persistence is the foundation of lasting confidence. Anyone can feel good about themselves when everything is going well, when they're winning, when they're praised. But the true test comes during hard times, when you feel invisible, uncertain, or like nothing you do is working. In those moments, the easy route is to retreat, to let fear take over. But those who choose to push forward, who persist, are the ones who build a deeper, more resilient kind of confidence. They're not motivated by instant rewards. They're committed to long-term growth. And every time they persist, even through discomfort, they send a message to themselves: I can handle this. I don't have to be perfect to be powerful. When you rely on perfection to feel confident, you trap yourself in fear. You only try things you're already good at. You avoid taking risks because failure would destroy the illusion you've built. But confidence built through persistence is different. It's flexible. It allows room for mistakes, for growth, for setbacks. It says, even if I fall, I will rise. And that attitude gives you the courage to try, to learn, and to lead. Because you're not afraid of falling anymore, you've practiced rising. Most people think confidence comes from results, from external outcomes like good grades, praise, success, or achievements. And yes, those things can boost confidence, but they don't build it. The real construction happens in the process, in the practice, the repetition, the failures, the late nights, and the quiet wins no one sees. It's built when you show up to do the hard work, over and over, without needing immediate proof that it's working. Confidence is earned in the repetition of effort. When you keep going, you strengthen your mental muscles. You develop inner stability. You begin to trust that even if today is hard, your consistency will pay off. That's why persistence is so powerful. It teaches your mind that success isn't just for the talented or lucky, it's for those who refuse to give up. People who persist develop grit, and grit is what carries you when motivation fades. Motivation is temporary, it comes and goes, and it often disappears when challenges arrive, but persistence is like a slow, burning fire. It's quiet but steady. It fuels progress even in silence. And as you stay persistent, you naturally become more confident, not because you've avoided failure, but because you've mastered the art of continuing anyway. There's also something incredibly empowering about persistence because it puts you back in control. So many people feel powerless because they think confidence depends on how others see them. But when you realize that you can build your own confidence, that it's a direct result of your willingness to persist. You become unstoppable. You stop waiting for someone else to approve of you. You stop measuring your worth through comparisons. Instead, you measure it by how consistently you show up, how often you bounce back, how hard you try even when it's difficult. That kind of confidence isn't loud or showy. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable, and it's the kind that lasts. The truth is, every time you take a step forward despite fear, you are practicing confidence. Every time you keep going after being knocked down, you're building resilience. Every time you resist the urge to quit and choose to believe in your potential instead, you're becoming stronger. You don't need to feel confident to start. You just need to start. Confidence will meet you along the way, shaped by your commitment, your persistence, and your refusal to settle for less than the best version of yourself. You own the power to write your own story, not your past. This is one of the most liberating truths a person can embrace. Too often, people let their history dictate their identity. They replay old failures, mistakes, and regrets in their minds until those memories become the lens through which they see themselves. But the past, no matter how loud or painful, does not have the right to hold the pen anymore unless you give it that power. You are not a victim of what happened to you. You are the author of what happens next. Every day you wake up is a blank page, and what you choose to write on it is entirely up to you. There are many people who never step into their full potential because they're too busy rereading the chapters of their life that hurt. They keep revisiting old decisions, rethinking old conversations, and reliving old wounds, and in doing so, they pause their own growth. The truth is, you can't build a powerful future if you're constantly anchored in the past. The pain, the failure, the disappointment, they were real, but they are not permanent. They were moments, not definitions. The more you give power to what has already happened, the less energy you have to create what's possible. Taking ownership of your story means refusing to be shaped by circumstances you can't change. It means choosing to act, to dream, and to grow even if the past whispers that you don't deserve to. It's about understanding that you have something stronger than memory. You have imagination, willpower, and vision. You have the ability to think for yourself, to learn new ways of being, to build new habits, and to design a life that reflects who you want to be, not who you used to be. That process begins with a decision, the decision to stop identifying with your history and start identifying with your potential. Many people struggle to move forward because they feel like their past disqualifies them from becoming someone better. They believe that a person who made those kinds of mistakes or went through those kinds of failures isn't allowed to succeed, to lead, or to be happy. But this belief is false. The past may have left scars, but scars are not signs of weakness. They're proof of survival. And survival is strength. The person who's fallen and gotten up again has more insight, more depth, and more wisdom than someone who's never been tested. When you begin to see your story in that light, you stop hiding your past in shame and start using it as evidence of resilience. It's easy to feel like you're stuck in a story you didn't choose, maybe because of your upbringing, your environment, your experiences, or your past decisions. But the turning point in every powerful life comes when someone realizes they can take the pen back. They can stop accepting the narrative they've been given and start writing their own version, one that reflects strength, growth, healing, and progress. You don't need permission to rewrite your story. You just need belief. You need the courage to say, "What's behind me is real, but it's not the whole story. I choose what happens next." You also have to understand that your story doesn't have to make sense to everyone else. People might know you by your past, but they don't get to define your future. They don't get to put limits on your growth. Their opinion doesn't decide your outcome. What matters most is how you see yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you carry yourself moving forward. When you see yourself as the writer of your life, you stop waiting for opportunities, you create them. You stop asking for approval, you walk in your own worth. You stop trying to erase your past, you outgrow it by building something greater. There will be days when the weight of your old story feels heavy, days when you're tempted to believe that nothing can change, but those are the moments that define whether you stay stuck or break through. And it's not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let it limit who you become. The power to change your story doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence, from vision, from the daily decision to keep moving forward. No matter where you've been, you still have the pen. The next chapter is waiting, and it's yours to write.